This is TWiT.
We were talking before the show about the continuing snafu in Iowa, the Iowa caucus results. I don't know if they've even come in yet, but they were held up because, and it turns out, I think now even Iowa's Democratic Party is blaming the app. This is an article just came out on Motherboard from Vice. Here's the Shadow Inc. app. Yeah, by the way, if you're going to get an app to do your elections, is Shadow the company you want to go to? I don't know.
Shadow, hard nope on that.
Here's the Shadow app that failed in Iowa. And they have done the best reporting so far on this app. They actually got a picture of the app. They were able to install. Well, they were able to install. They tried it on two phones. One, they were able to install it on, one not. They talked to a precinct captain who was supposed to use it, named Jonathan Green. He's the chair of the Democratic caucuses in Iowa's Fremont Township and Lone Tree precincts. He's also an IT sysadmin. So this is a pretty good, reliable guy to talk to. He said they weren't sent the app or information about the app until January 18th. They actually, they were invited to test it January 18th via Test Ferry. That's for Android. There's also a test flight on iOS, of course. And by the way, he wasn't able to get it to install on an iPhone. He was able to get it to install on Android. However, he wasn't able to log in. Green, who used his this is from Motherboard, who used his personal S7 Samsung, said in order to report results, he had to sign in with an email and a password, provide a two-factor authentication, I'm guessing a text message, because he then also had to enter a one-time password from the Google Authenticator app. After that, he'd need to enter his precinct PIN, but he didn't get that far. And this is last night during the caucus. He was trying to report the results. When he entered the one-time password generated by Authenticator, he got this error message. IDP Caucus 2020. Oops, something went wrong. There could be a misconfiguration in the system or a service outage. We track these errors automatically, but if the problem persists, feel free to contact us. Please try again. And then the address specifies an unknown protocol that the browser did not recognize. So it sounds like the install perhaps didn't complete. 3 experts consulted by Motherboard said they couldn't determine much about the issue based on the error message. And so because the Democratic Party in Iowa expected everybody to use this app, that app which they only gave training to people and information to people about the day before the caucus, they didn't have a call center set up. They did say if we can't get the app working, we'll take you can call in as we have in years past. But apparently that didn't work very well. And now they are blaming the app for the fact that they have to do a manual. At least they have a paper trail.
Right.
So they're blaming the app, but now they have to do the recount via paper to validate the results. The New York Times said the app wasn't tested widely before it was deployed. Gregory Miller, co-founder of the Open Source Election Technology Institute, quoted by Motherboard as saying it was obvious the app was rushed. He said, I don't want to say I told you so, but...
I informed you thusly.
I mean, there were security experts for a month saying they're really worried that this isn't going to work. Because there wasn't any outside testing.
This is what Miller said, and this is what Miller does, right, is election security. So
Right.
when you're vetting an app for something like this, you need to do load testing, regression testing, pen testing. It's not just the app, it's the deployment process. No one should ever deploy an app like this and have a pop-up that says it isn't safe for your phone, which is, by the way, the pop-up that Android users got. It's a stock pop-up you'll get when you install something from a third party, but still.
Right.
Shadow apologized. Apparently he has a Twitter. Shadow Inc. HQ. We will apply the lessons learned in the future. I've already corrected the underlying technology issue. You know why that's important? Nevada also is supposedly using this app in their caucus.
Well, hopefully they'll do some more training.
We take these issues very seriously and are committed to improving and evolving to support the Democratic Party's goal of modernizing its election process. You know what also is concerning? West Virginia is talking about using an app.
They already have.
For the elections.
Well, they used it in the last elections.
Well, it worked.
Yeah.
There's no paper trail. That's the problem with the internet voting.
Are there any dangling chads? They simulate the dangling chads.
Okay, well.
I think one of this
Go ahead, Andy.
issue with multiple
Hold on a second, Lory. Go ahead.
It has to be mentioned that there's a first part of a 5-part report the Senate Intelligence Subcommittee on what happened in the 2016 elections. Really went into depth on what we need to do to fix elections. I mean, we should say to improve this. I was about to say fix elections. No. To improve the safety and security of elections. They did mention that one of the most important features of the election is simple faith in the process, that you have a system that is not going to be hijacked by anybody else. And that's one of the reasons. Well, that's one of the reasons against having a voting by phone. You need to make sure that if something bad happens, there is always a backup, or there's always an ability for an independent outside agency, whether it's a public service thing or they're being funded by someone, to look at the data to make sure they know that nothing bad happened. There was an incident recently. I forget what district it was in, but they found out that a whole bunch of their touchscreen voting machines, they had like some dead pixels on like the left-hand side of the screen, so that and of course anybody who tried to vote for a candidate who was inside the dead zone of pixels, it would not go through and would be voted for somebody else. And that was really, really bad, but it would have been worse if the machine had no paper trail, so that when it was caught almost immediately by the election wardens, who immediately said, okay, I don't think that this candidate won by 32,000 votes to 117. We are going to immediately throw out all the digital things, and we're going to go to a paper recount. So that's one of the things it's just as important to have the appearance of a fair and safe election as it is to have an actual fair and safe election, because otherwise nobody will trust the results. It will always be a year's worth of recounts and court filings.
Lory?
So that's why you really need a test.
Lory, go ahead.
And exactly what you're talking about, Andy, is part of, I think, it was more than just that the app didn't work for some people, because, we don't have the numbers on how many people couldn't download the app or couldn't log into the app. But I think what it speaks to is our fear about doing something like this for something that is so important. So you kind of start with the election meddling issues that we had from the 2016 election. That's already put us on guard. We're already afraid, right? And then you take a brand new bit of technology that people haven't even had the opportunity to test yet. So when it gets to that point where you download the app and it didn't work the first time, you give up, you make the phone call. Or maybe you got it downloaded, but you couldn't figure out the password. You give up, you make the phone call. There's many steps under which the fear of it going wrong, I think, created a fervor of not even trying to make sure that it would work. We're already a little bit afraid of like how our technology is working for us anyway. And I think this was just a culmination of a lot of reasons to doubt its ability to work right, causing people to just immediately switch over to, I'm going to do it the way that I feel safer and more comfortable with. I think maybe, 4 years from now, this might work better. But right now, there was just a number of things that rolled into this ball of a complete failure.
That's what Alex was saying. It's kind of ironic because they were so worried about election meddling and hacking that they didn't let anybody see the app.
Right.
And then what bit them was the obvious, simple stuff. The app didn't work.
And the hard part is that, almost all of this is correctable with process, which wasn't here. Like that.
You're
that
the
is
king of this. When you set up events like this, this is what you know how to do.
This is what we worry about all the time. Is you have to practice. You have to push all the bugs out. You have to, and you always. I have never seen a platform of any size with any company launch and not have some quirks.
It's normal.
It's normal. So you don't launch it on the, you don't launch it a day before you actually need to use it in a mission critical. This is a year of development. It's $3 to $5 million of cost. It's reported that they paid Shadow like $60,000.
That's all.
Now maybe Shadow was deferring that cost across a lot of other states or trying to. They raised I think $7.7 million in funding, but I doubt they spent it all on this app. And so and I think that the place that we see with a lot of these apps, and I'm going to be a curmudgeon for the moment, is when the coders are in their 20s or early 20s and the people speccing it are in their 60s, you end up with this thing where people don't understand what they're asking for and people don't understand what could go wrong. So you end up in this kind of craziness of and what we see here is people not being afraid enough of what's going on. They're so afraid of having the code not work. Or be hacked, that they didn't think that it was just not going to work, which is what really happens all the time, is it just doesn't work. And it doesn't work for Apple, it doesn't work for Google, it doesn't work for Facebook, it doesn't work for Microsoft. All of them have those bugs. All of them have problems going on, and it's a normal problem. But the thing is that's the thing you got to be afraid of. It's more likely to have that happen than the Russians, getting in to mess with your Iowa elections. So they looked at the wrong beast and ended up getting bit, from a different direction.
Here's the from the Shadow webpage, shadowinc.io. Apparently they say their mission is to build political power for the progressive movement by developing affordable and easy-to-use tools for teams and budgets of any size. They said in their statement from the CEO, Gerard Naimura, sorry, Shadow is an independent for-profit technology company that contracted with the Democratic Party to build a caucus reporting mobile app, which was optional for local officials to use. I don't think you blame Shadow. You can sort of blame Shadow. They're the tech people in this. You certainly could blame management at the Iowa Democratic Party for not knowing what to do, but they're not the tech people in this.
But I think that a lot of times what happens is you have non-technical people making requests, and they want it to be done for 10 cents because they think that this is all really expensive. Right. And the thing is that what they're learning right now is that it can be really, really expensive because this is disastrous for the candidates who are trying to get momentum. And the problem is that the Bernie followers got sandbagged on the last election, and now they feel sandbagged again because they had a really good turnout.
Sandbagged. You pay a lot of money. You go to Iowa. You spend a lot of time in Iowa. You hope to be the one that gets to give that speech in prime time
before New Hampshire.
So before New Hampshire to say we won, and that's what Obama did 8 years ago.
Well, and it's what
12 years ago.
Santorum wasn't able to do when he actually won Iowa, and then it was announced that Mitt Romney won, and that was the end of his campaign.
Yeah,
and so this is and again, I mean,
it's a big responsibility that Iowa has.
This is the last time.
They're never getting that chance again.
They're never going to be first.
That's
again.
two. That's two now.
Yeah,
2 and you're out. Not only first, and also I'll be interested to see what happens in Nevada because apparently they're going to use this app as well. On the About page for Shadow, it says we are campaign and technology veterans who have built and implemented technology at Hillary for America, Obama for America, Google, Kiva, Apple, the AFL-CIO, and the DNC.
I don't know,
but it doesn't have any names. Rene, Ritchie, are the Canadians laughing at us at this point?
Oh God, I don't know. I mean, there's so few of us here to vote.
It's a small state up north. Yeah.
And we have elections at a non-set schedule whenever we go to the Queen and she allows us to have elections, and we can take down a government with a vote of no confidence. So it's a whole different Michigan here, Leo.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, this it was a caucus. It wasn't a poll, an election. It isn't a big election. It's a primary. If you're going to make mistakes like this, I guess that's.
It looks like Nevada dropped it.
Oh, they've abandoned it now.
Yeah.
All right. So there you go.
But it's also a huge opening for someone with a really big microphone tonight to make fun of, which is
we know that's going to be, and I think that's already,
which is going to be a less than great result for everybody.
Somewhat, and
yeah,
you know what? That's not unfair.
Yeah.
His initial tweet, the president's initial tweet was, Democrats can't even run a caucus. How are they supposed to run the country? You know what? That's not unfair.
Well, it does point out one of the risks of having a built-in lack of faith in elections. If you, it creates the unprecedented opportunity for someone who did not like the result of an election to say, I think that as the responsible thing to do would be to remain in office until the people have faith that this election was completely above board.
That's right.
And that's a scary thought.
That's not what you want.
I sure do hope nobody heard you.
No notes. No notes. Erase that.
Don't put any ideas in anyone's head.
There's already an orange binder on some shelf somewhere. I don't know whether it's how to retain power or here's how we administer the tranquilizer, and here's the giant armoire we're going to hide the body in. So we can take it out of the White House.
Without... The LA Times is saying the developers were formerly Clinton tech team for 2016. The Democratic caucus in Nevada is in just 18 days. It's February 22nd. They've already said they will not be using this app. We will not be employing the same app or vendor used in the Iowa caucus they had planned to. We've already developed a series of backups and redundant reporting systems and are currently evaluating the best path forward. So,
I don't like the idea of sort of staying stagnant in this kind of thing, like in our election process. But at the same time, it is so important that if we can't get it right the first time, we should just stick with what we have, because that one seems to be more reliable, and our election process is very important. And it's not just kind of a matter of, well, we didn't quite get it right like this year, so we'll try again next year. You can't really do that. So I definitely, I would like to see progress in the way the system is done, but I also would not want this to happen again. So I think it was very smart for Nevada to say, you know what, we're going to go back to the things that we already had in place, all these redundancy plans to make sure that we get this right. We're going to just drop this whole technological thing and just kind of stick with what we know. I
think that one of the ththings that's really important is finding ways to constantly hit something in the public without it being mission critical. I mean, we run into this all the time. Someone wants to, let's say, stream to a brand new platform and it's going to be launched. You have no idea what's going to happen until you turn it on. And so what we're always trying to look for is how do we do a bunch of things that aren't really visible or aren't that important. And if they fail, then we figure out what we can fix. But before we get to that one that actually matters, we want to keep on hitting those because you just know you're going to run into those. And just coming out of the gate with it is, and even the sample rate of all 50 states to me would be a very small sample rate to test something, even if they got all of them. I mean, they need, for something of this magnitude, they need to be doing hundreds or thousands of tests. They need to think of a platform that they can use day in, day out with the public that is the same platform that they're going to use for something bigger. Building something custom
celebrity
for this
quizzes.
Is dangerous.
Just like Facebook-style celebrity. Which Game of Thrones character are you? Run it a million times. Which Friends character are you?
Yep.
I'm going to quote one of my great heroes, Helmut von Moltke the Elder, who said,
Not the younger.
Not the younger. No, he was an idiot. No battle plan survives contact with the enemy. Isn't that what you're saying?
Yeah. Or the map is not the territory.
Yeah.
My favorite one related to that is Omar Bradley that said, amateurs talk about strategy and professionals talk about logistics.
Yeah. Logistics, baby.
Because it's just
that's what happened here was the logistics failed. It wasn't the hack. There was this logistics fail. Yeah. Here's a quote from CNN. The Iowa Democratic Party pushed heavily to make this year's caucus a high-tech affair. They initially proposed a virtual caucus system that would see caucus goers, you didn't even have to leave the house, use a smartphone. National officials shot that down over security concerns. We talked about this on iOS Today, Micah and I. Even though we all love technology and we're technologists, you ask technologists, especially security experts, they aren't always going to say the best solution is a technological solution, right?
Right.
Sometimes a piece of paper isn't so... Yeah, they're scared of it.
Yeah, we're the first ones terrified.
We know too much. Yeah.
The other problem is you can't assume that every single district has the money to upgrade to the sort of standards that people in a think tank would think is necessary to run an election. It's the great thing about paper ballots is that it's easy to deploy. The hardware is already there. It is considered to be very, very reliable. And suddenly asking a district that can barely afford its educational budget to please pay $780 each to replace every single year of your voting stations with something that's up to date. That's a really big ask.
And it's money that can come from the Democratic National Committee, and if it's something that is the most important election in the last 100 and some years, it would have been to their best interest to make sure that it worked.
Yeah, but the other problem is going to be every time there is a way to unilaterally make an election system better, there will always be the calculus done by one party or another to say, oh, this might cause more voters who vote against us to get an opportunity to vote, and therefore, on principle, we're going to block this from happening. It's just a really, really big mess, and it's going to take a revolution to really fix all the problems.
This, of course, from the always on point Randall Monroe. This is not a current one, but it's still very apropos. Asking aircraft designers about airplane safety. Nothing's ever foolproof, but modern airliners are incredibly resilient. Flying is the safest way to travel. Asking building engineers about elevator safety. Elevators are protected by multiple tried and tested fail-safe mechanisms. They're nearly incapable of falling. Asking software engineers about computerized voting. That's terrifying. Wait, really? Don't trust voting software and don't listen to anyone who tells you it's safe. Why? I don't quite know how to put this, but our entire field is bad at what we do, and if you rely on us, everyone will die. They say they've fixed it with something called blockchain. Ah! Whatever they sold you, don't touch it. Bury it in the desert. Wear gloves. Thank you,
Salt
Randall
the earth.
Monroe. Salt the earth.